Hello, everybody. Welcome back to AACRAO's Credential Chats. And this week we are joined by Ashley Archer Doehling. She is the Curriculum Initiative Analyst at Kennesaw State University. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And, for anybody who doesn't know, Kennesaw State is pretty famous in this space right now because you all are just so far ahead in being comfortable and confident publishing things. And so, I know that I check your website all the time because your comms resources are just really stellar for just helping your learning community make sense and make meaning of what y'all are doing.
Thank you. Yes, that is part of my role as the curriculum initiative analyst, is also overseeing our micro-credential initiative. And so part of that obviously is keeping our resources and communication as up to date as possible for both our learners here on campus and in the community, but also to our peers also doing micro-credentials in different spaces.
Yeah, and again, for anybody who hasn't looked at it, if you're trying to figure out what do we call things, how do we describe the different things that we're calling them, Kennesaw State has spelled it out and is very generous in their team sharing over the years. And I say over the years, it's been a minute. Like, do you have any updates that you wanted to let people know about with that?
It has been, and I cannot take full credit for it. So the Micro-Credential Initiative at Kennesaw actually started prior to my employment here at the university. So there's some fantastic predecessors to my position and just folks across campus that really got this initiative up and going. But since I have adopted the Micro-Credential Initiative management part of my role, part of that ongoing and updating as our initiative grows is updating those resources. So exciting news, I just posted our micro-credential guide version 3.0 last week on the website. And so if anyone is on there or has been on there recently, but not as recently as last Friday, take another look, and we've got some updated content.
Really exciting. We'll hopefully remember to put that in the show notes when we post this for our community of viewers. And another thing that I think it sort of ties into that just communication piece and just meaning making piece is the record keeping of
Yeah.
everything. And so, you were sharing that you are really starting to think now that you have been doing it for a few years that maybe it's audit time. And so, what do you have to share about that?
Yeah, so knowing that I've been in my role for about 2 years, a little over 2 years here at Kennesaw, and our initiative started about 2 years before that, we've got some of those early credentials floating out in our platform, our hosting platform, that when I was going through and just updating things and making sure everything was aligned still, I was like, ooh, that hasn't been awarded in a few semesters. What's going on there, right? Or some of those workforce skills, especially with some of the hotter topics like artificial intelligence and automation in the workforce, right? Where is that showing up or could show up in our credentials? And because of kind of those developments, are some of our credentials outdated now? And so I thought back to one of my professors in my graduate programs. She was all about closing the loop. And so Dr. Jillian Volpe White, if you ever see this, I have you in my heart always. So I was like, where does that loop start, right, for us, and where do we follow it? And so I can go kind of through the steps in my mind of this auditing process that is in development,
Yeah, I think
transparency
that
there,
that would be
in
really
development.
helpful. Just, yeah, because most of us are not yet to that place. And, especially, in macro audience is definitely, we're people who think about things like the reliability, the verifiability, the currency and how current our credentials are. And so I think that you're really touching on stuff that a lot of people are breaking out pens right now and taking notes. So yeah, where is your thought process?
Yeah, good. If anyone knows anything about Kennesaw State's micro-credential initiative, it is that our capital T truth and the guiding light for our initiative is our taxonomy. So that encompasses our souvenirs, level 1 and 2 badges, and then ultimately our digital certificates. And so when we think about where that taxonomy is or how that taxonomy retains relevancy and credibility to both our earners, our issuers here on campus, and also our ultimate end users, which are, employers. we've got to get their feedback at the beginning of our loop. So that feedback is really kind of step one for me. So connecting with industry experts and employers about what are you looking for? Where do you find value in credentials you see? Where are gaps that you are looking to fill in your particular company even, and how can micro-credentials help meet that gap so that we can then go to our issuers, is the language we use here at Kennesaw, our issuers, and say, this is what, our workforce partners are wanting. This is what they're needing. You're doing that, or you could be doing that. And so helping connect those pieces together. Also utilizing some of our resources in labor market analysis. And so I use Lightcast resources a lot to see where the demand is, both in our particular geographic region here in North Georgia and beyond, to make sure that folks across campus who are in these spaces, we'll probably talk about AI 100 times because it is on my brain today, who are doing AI type things already here on campus are really capitalizing on that for our students or faculty staff. Our initiative is open to earners of all types, and that they are being able to demonstrate the competencies and demonstrate the skills that they're learning through these different experiences they're having. So industry experts, our issuers, their content knowledge, the labor market analysis that we're doing, and then ultimately our earners, which are faculty, staff, students, community members. What are you looking for, and how can we support you there?
That's really just so great, and that just such a collaborative effort, it sounds like, that really, I think sometimes we worry about, for our constituents that we're trying to serve, that we might show up in ways that may feel unwelcome, right? Especially when you're going to your issuers and saying, hey, we might have some missing sort of, skills and competencies that we could talk about here. And I hear you saying, we have a positive assumption that you're already doing this. Can we help like hold up a new mirror to the process that helps you see some of the magic that right now is not actually visible to you so that we can start articulating that and including that language
Absolutely.
in our credentials?
That's what I love about kind of our initiative here at Kennesaw is centralized. And so my bird's eye view is I can really, help amplify what folks are already doing and help them recognize we're all so busy. You don't have to recreate what you're doing, but rather how can we really show the skills that are being demonstrated, which is the foundation of our initiative here at Kennesaw, is the demonstration of skills rather than a particular seat time or time spent in a particular learning experience. And then how can we, use that continuous feedback, integrate it to maintain and help keep our initiative current, but then also employ sort of a centralized, aka me and my team, more managerial, like biannual audit to where we go through and, okay, so and so hasn't been awarded since October of 2 years ago. What happened? Is it no longer relevant for earners? Was there some turnover in the folks that were awarding it in that office and we just need some support and some training again? Or is there something else going on? And so kind of using internal and external benchmarking in terms of what are folks looking for in external spaces, and then what are we completing, what are we awarding here at Kennesaw within our initiative helps. And then it helps being transparent in that reporting. And so where we're moving is to an annual report and kind of summary of the Micro-Credential initiative in terms of awards, skills, number of learners, things like that, to make sure that we are staying relevant and continuing to grow the initiative and that we're not being static in any way and not meeting those workforce demands that ultimately support the social mobility of all of our earners.
And actually, correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the things I almost hear you as you describe like moving towards this annual report is that unlike a lot of reports in higher ed, this doesn't feel like compliancy. This feels like for your issuers, you're kind of internally hyping and marketing what they're doing, and shining light on them through what, the intent of this report.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best ways to then close that feedback loop that we've started, right, is in addition to doing those kind of like actionable pieces where we are archiving maybe credentials that are no longer relevant, so we can really put a timestamp on, this credential was earned from here to here. It was super, super valuable during that time, but now we've evolved into something different. We can update earning criteria for the credentials if something has shifted, make sure that the links pointing learners to the different pieces of these credentials are accurate. But and that kind of iterative nature make sure that this update is happening and this relevancy can be maintained over time. But at the core of my loop, right, is those relationships. And so how can I hype you up within reason? And then how can the development and the maintenance of those relationships that we have both internally and externally continue to maintain the credibility, the validity, which I will say 1,000 times, of our initiative, while also helping it grow, because we don't want to lose that value just to say that we have more credentials offered to more learners.
And do you mind just like putting a pin in that for a sec, right? With that
Yeah.
validity piece of like, what do you mean, not sacrificing the value or currency, by chasing quantity?
Yeah.
What do you
Um,
mean by that? Like, what are we, what's the risk factor there that we want to control for?
so I think that we don't want to look for my report to say really, really sparkly numbers, right? But then when we dive in and do more of that like deep analysis of our credentials, that they are more participatory, to where the learners are not actually demonstrating skills, right? Because that is not giving them kind of that quantifiable, qualifiable evidence of this is something that I can do. We
So
don't
for
want
Kennesaw, when
to,
you say validity, you're literally talking that we are validating that an
yes,
earner has met the earning criteria, that that we are our credentials are credentialing something, and there is
by a
measurable earning
content
criteria that's
expert.
being assessed.
Yes, that our earners have done something, it was verified by an expert that they have demonstrated this skill or competency on either a level one, which is we're practicing it, or a level two within our taxonomy. They have mastered this skill, right? And so just to say that we have 250 credentials, we don't want to lose the foundation of our initiative, which is that definition of micro-credentials in our space, and then that alignment to the taxonomy that really helps scale the competency and the demonstration.
And in the cases where, you reference, wow, this thing is still being offered, it seems though that it's evolved a little bit from what we have in our bulletin or our catalog. So when that happens, what does that look like at Kennesaw? Are you retiring one and then, spinning up the new version? What's your record keeping process?
Yeah, it depends. And this is something that I am chatting with our micro-credential committee a lot about right now, which is made up of faculty and staff across campus. They're also the main review party for new micro-credentials that are proposed here on campus. Is what constitutes an email to Ashley's inbox, like, hey, the link to access our modules has changed, or the submission criteria has shifted from a one-page reflection to a two-page reflection. Are those quick updates that are still in alignment with the original intent of the proposed micro-credential, versus when is it something that needs to be shuttered, archived, it was relevant here for a certain amount of time, and now we need kind of version 2.0, right? And so what has come up most recently is if there is any change to the skills that are associated with a micro-credential, including the addition of of skills, we want to probably archive and start a new one. If the assessment, what the earner is actually submitting, the earning criteria has shifted significantly, we want to do that version 2.0. Or if the content in any way has shifted drastically, kind of in line with what we would expect for a new course here on campus. Significant changes, you need a new course to just maintain the integrity of what the first learners did versus what the new learners are doing.
Yeah, 100% agree. And then the quick plug for, any of the AACRAO audience, this is also a great question. Check in with your vendors about if you do make updates, depending on your software, it may proliferate to things that have already been issued. which
Right.
would, even more heighten the need, as Ashley talks about, to go ahead and retire the one and spin up a new version of it on the, digital credential issuing side of things. One final thing just in our closing moments there, Ashley, is you mentioned, something that's more just kind of participatory. And I think that is a great opportunity because there was actually a question this week on the AACRAO Innovative Credentials listserv about, non credit, non-academic and even participatory type things. And Kennesaw State was one of the first campuses, maybe the first, to really create in your taxonomy a place for that with those souvenir badges that you referenced. So maybe just a couple quick moments to just share with this audience what those are and why you do think it's worthwhile to recognize things that maybe aren't, being assessed.
Yeah, absolutely. So souvenirs were originally built into the taxonomy to really help that differentiation between what is something that someone is obviously participating in versus they are doing something and demonstrating some skill. However, not to discount the souvenirs at all. And you'll actually see kind of this more fleshed out in our micro-credential guide version 3.0 is where the value lies in a souvenir. So it's not that skill demonstration, but it is some experience that has impacted the learner in some way. And so that could be, them exploring a new career trajectory. It could be them engaging and finding community and belonging on campus. And for me, as kind of again, that bird's eye view centralized, I think it's a great stepping stone into some of our level 1, level 2, and ultimately digital certificates. And so a lot of our issuers have souvenirs for folks that interact with them. And then they say, great, you're interested. You've done this. You've learned more about it. Now, what about this level 1 where you're actually practicing something? So it's both meaningful on its own and a stepping stone into more of that applicability that earners can then share out to demonstrate what they're able to do in the workforce.
I couldn't agree more, and I personally grateful because I truly believe that Kennesaw State souvenir badges would help me, internally in my institution gain support for us rolling out our version of it, and I
It was
think
a
that
great uniting piece for folks who were digital badging in silos across campus, was including the souvenirs into the taxonomy and really creating kind of that pathway for folks.
I love that. Yeah, instead of having to tell them no, you found a way to tell them yes, and I
Yeah,
think everything you described, in addition to just just ninja change management, I think it also really speaks to creating a culture of recognition within our learning community that you're 4 years deep in it, and it just seems like you're kind of have hit a tipping point of people get it, and and it's got to be just feeling really exciting for where it's going to go in the next couple years.
it's exciting. It's for me all about the relationships that we're creating on campus with our issuers across academic and not in the academic spaces, and then providing that ultimately customer service to our issuers from kind of the management coordination piece of my role is you're doing this, you're offering this fantastic thing to your earners. How can I help you? How can I support you and help make sure that your credentials stay relevant and that there is inherent value because you are offering a KSU micro-credential, because all of our micro-credentials adhere to this taxonomy that has value and uplifts all of the credentials within it.
Yes, just that currency and value piece. I love it. Ashley Archer Doehling, thank you so much, especially
Thank
for, I
you.
promised 15. I think we might have gone 18.
I
Just
appreciate everyone's
I went
time.
over with my Kennesaw State University fan club newsletter.
And I
Just,
am always happy to
um,
make new friends, and I love hearing feedback. I love giving advice that I also need to follow. So please let everyone know that they can reach out anytime.
oh, delightful. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for your time and have a badge worthy week, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.